Hey guys, Roman here. In today's video, I'll show you how to do reading section. So I'll be doing a complete mock test of reading section only. And this will be done by using our own mock test platform. We call this mock mini test, and this is one of those small tests which you can do as you would do in the exam. And the benefit of this is you don't have to sit for the whole 3 hours to find out how would you do in the exam. And this will also give you an opportunity to understand in what order the questions come and how stressful it can be to manage time. Okay, let's start the test now. The first question here is starting from fill in the blanks reading and writing. And the first question is, and waited until a proper young man to her for marriage. Here my clue is to, and it's marriage. So if I look at all the words given here, it's proposed, rejected, denied, and agreed. So denied and rejected are negative words. So my choices are either proposed and agreed, and I'll go with proposed because that matches with the word marriage. The second one is a whole of young women. And then in this one, I'll go with the word generation, because when we are talking about people from the same period, then we call them a generation. And then after that, the third one is adopted, discarded, and created. And I'll take the word discarded because if you read the full sentence here, it says that these people were wearing a different kind of stockings in the past and now they're wearing a different kind, which means they left wearing the previous one. For this one, I'll go with the word lavish because here the idea is they were living a really good life or a glamorous life, and the word here exuberant social life gives me that idea. Exuberant social life, they were wealthy. So lavish is the word, which means like you are living a glamorous life, you are living a life full of pleasures and everything. And the last one would be pursued because they're talking about the ideal. And if I look at all the other options, these words cannot be used for ideal. And if you look carefully, then you can see that shunned and ignored are negative words. So of course, I'm not going to use them. Interest is used for physical things. So these are the answers of the first question here. The second one, there was a time, it's a collocation. And the next one is to pause, to check there, or perhaps surf the internet. And out of all of these things, the thing that is related to the internet is emails. That's why that's the one that I'll select here. A Nepalese telecommunications company has, and because it's equipment, I'll go with the word installed. And in the next one, Ansel says the installation of base stations along the could be way, could be route, could be track, and could be road, but it's about mountain. And so which word would be the more appropriate here? Especially if you're going from one place to another place and you're following the same path, you call that route. So that's why the word will be root here. By the way, did you notice that when I was reading this line, it says Ansel says the installation, which means they were talking about something they installed earlier. And that is also a clue that installed should be the answer here. Expedition leaders had to send runners to carry to the nearest telegraph office. So you have to think what people take to the telegraph office. A common mistake here is telegram. The answer should be messages because telegram is not something that you can carry. Telegram is an electronic message. So that's why the answer actually is messages. Satellite, then mobile voice phones have since helped travel faster. This is a collocation based question and you have to look at the options and decide which one of them actually travels, and that is news. So these are the answers. The third one is to protect their, and these are people who belong to royal family because they are emperors, and for their families we use the word dynasties. It was a line of barricades. So you have to think what kind of barricades it was. And if you read the previous sentence, it says, but the wall was not a solid wall. That means it was disconnected. If it was not a solid wall, that means they were not connected to each other. He wanted a wall 30 feet wide. He wanted a wall 30 feet wide, 50 feet high, means he wanted a strong wall. And then after that, it was lever. What kind of labor it could be? Slave labor, captive labor, victim labor, servant labor. And the answer is slave labor, because slave labor means the kind of labor where you are not actually paid and you are just asked to work. And the clue I'm getting here is laborers were not paid for their work. So it was just as if they were slaves. And the last one is workers died of exhaustion and something. Could be any of this, but the answer is fever, because exhaustion and fever is a collocation. So far you may have noticed that often Pearson tests your knowledge of collocation. So you need to be very good at collocations. And if you already do not know about collocations, please download the collocation list from our website if you are one of our enrolled students. Now let's go to the next question here. And the next one says, national responsibility for national development is the necessary consequence of. This is a very difficult question. The answer is sovereignty, and sovereignty means same as independence. And if you read the sentence, what they're saying is, if national responsibility for national development is the necessary consequence of sovereignty. That means if you want to be independent, then you have to take you have to assume the responsibility for your development. And the next one is, strategies cannot be overemphasized. Remember, if you say something cannot be overemphasized, what that means is no matter how much you talk about it, no matter how much you highlight it, it's still its importance is still not highlighted enough. So cannot be overemphasized means no matter how much you emphasize, it will not be enough. And if you say cannot be overstated, that means no matter how many times you say, it will not be something beyond normal. Okay, so I hope you got the idea here. And then next one is to adopt and start of these strategies, and it is implementation, because as you can see here, we are talking about applying these strategies. So implementation would be the right answer here. And the automatic of the principle is that would be corollary. Now corollary is like something which is logically derived based on a fact you know. So as an example, if you say that in a right angle triangle, one of the angle is 90 degree, then the corollary is the other two angles should be 45 degree each. And that's what we say corollary. Now, if you can remember, or if you can refer back to your knowledge of geometry in the school, I think that will help you to understand this. And then the next one is, should not only be to country circumstances, should not only be attuned to, because the word to here collocates with attune, which means, and attuned to means tuning is matching with that. And what it means is the developmental strategies should not only be matching with the country circumstances, but also other things as mentioned there. And strike a balance means to have a balance, and it's a collocation. The next one is, this paper. This is a very simple question. This paper analyzes, because we often use this phrase, this paper analyzes, especially in formal academic writing, as independent variables. Now, in academic discussions and academic writing, variables are like those individual items that you're trying to study. So we call them variables, especially in research and in statistics. The data were obtained from several such as, which means sources, because after the gap you can see there is such as, and that means the words like World Tourism Organization, Australian Bureau of Statistics. These are the examples of different sources from where the data were obtained. And the next one is, and the price of domestic travel and accommodation are influenced by, and that would be negatively influenced by. Always remember that the ly words usually come before or after the verbs, and they are called adverbs. And that was the clue I was able to use to answer this question. And the last one is, an Australian's interest in different cultures and lifestyles. It could be knowing, it could be experiencing, it could be practicing, it could be familiarizing, it could not be occurring. So I think this is a little bit different one and a difficult one. So I want to know whether they just wanted to know about it or they wanted to experience it. Because for practicing and familiarizing are two that I can eliminate because of the context here. The forecast suggests the number of short-term resident departures will increase strongly over the next 10 years, largely due to the strength of the Australian economy, competitive travel prices, and Australia's interest in experiencing different cultures, because these people are actually leaving the place to go to a new place. That means they want to experience the culture, not just know about it. Okay, that was fill in the blanks, reading and writing. Now this one, the main idea contained in this text deals with. And in questions like this, usually the main idea will be either in the beginning of the passage or in the end of the passage. In this case, the main idea is in the beginning of this paragraph as well as in the beginning of this paragraph. And since this is not a very long paragraph, even if we read everything, I don't think we'll be wasting that much time. And in these three paragraphs, we can see that we are talking about, or the author is talking about, two different points in time when two different organizations believe that the world's population reached 6 billion, and that means it is actually the estimated points in time at which the world's population reached a given figure. If you look at the other options, they are simply wrong if you have enough time to eliminate them by comparing with information in the passes. Now, one practical tip here: multiple choice questions do not carry that many points, so it's not a good idea to spend too much time on this. Although you can learn what is the best way to answer this question, but if you are applying those best ways, in fact, practically you'll be wasting a lot of time, and that is not a good idea. The next one is, according to this text, how do excise taxes usually differ from tariffs? There is a small typo here. Excise taxes are levied on all products, while tariffs apply to government-made goods. Excise taxes are levied on specifically identified commodities, while tariffs apply to all goods. Now, you can quickly go through all the options without spending too much time. And since the question is specifically about the difference between excise taxes and tariffs, you can go to the part of the passage where they are talking about the difference, and you can see the differences here. They differ from tariffs, which usually apply to, and if you read, you can find that they say only to foreign made goods, and from sales taxes, which typically apply to all commodities other than those specifically exempted. So that means excise taxes, how they are different. This one, excise taxes are levied on goods produced and consumed in one country, while tariffs apply to imports, because that's what they say here, that if you're getting something from outside, then that is tariff, and if you are just being taxed for what you consumed in your own country, that will be excise taxes. Now, read a paragraph, and let's quickly do this one as well. Here, the first sentence is this one: passivity is not, of course, universal. But the reason for that is if I check the other sentences, all of them have something that tells me that there was something before them. However, in this sentence tells me it is contrasting with the point mentioned before. And this one is talking about peasantry, and without actually introducing the topic, you can't just start describing the topic like peasantry, so it will not be the first sentence. This depends on this tells me that something came before this, and that's what they are referring to. So indeed, it means again they are referring to something. So this one says passivity is not, of course, universal. That means passivity is not something you can find everywhere. And a corollary of this is that means in some places you can find active things as well. And now if we look for passive and active in the same sentence, it will be in this sentence. And those of you who are interested in reading both the sentences and understanding what they are actually trying to say, what they're saying is passivity is not everywhere, but in most of the places, whether people want to be active or passive depends on when they want to become active and when they want to go back to being passive. And now, because this sentence is talking about, for most of the soil-bound peasants, the problem is not whether to be normally passive or active, but when to pass from one state to another. When. This is referring to time. So we have to go to the place where they are saying that there is a kind of uncertainty. And that uncertainty is here. In areas where there are no laws or in frontier zones where all men go armed, the attitude of the peasantry may well be different. So indeed, it may be on the fringe of unsubmissive. Now, I just realized that maybe I have made a mistake here. Why? Because I feel like this sentence cannot be put anywhere. Because if I put it here, this depends on, it would not make any sense. Because this depends on means what depends on. So I think this one should be here. Passivity is not, of course, universal. For most soil-bound peasants, the problem is not whether to be normally passive or active, but when to pass from one state to another. So that means it depends on something, right? And that's why it says this depends on an assessment of the political situation. When you assess the political situation and you feel it's favorable or not favorable. So the clue here is this says when, and this tells me about the time, right? And then after that, these two are together, and here they say the attitude of the peasantry may well be different, And that attitude sometimes can be unsubmissive. Remember, unsubmissive is a type of attitude, which means you do not usually give in. You do not usually just surrender to things. All right, let me say it one more time. Passivity is not universal, but whether you for most of the soil-bound peasants, the problem is not whether to be active or passive. The problem is when you should be active and when you should be passive, and that decision they take based on the assessment of the political situation. Maybe when it is favorable, they become active, and when not, they become passive. And now they're talking about a group of specific people by saying when in areas where there are no lords or laws, or in frontier zones where all men go armed, the attitude of the peasantry may well be different. And because they're talking about attitude, you can see unsubmissive is a specific type of attitude they're discussing in the next sentence. Now we have another question which is quite easy, so I'll just quickly go through this question. Once upon a time, we all know that this is a very common way of starting the paragraphs. There lived a generous and kind-hearted king, and then after, maybe this one, because the king was too lazy and would not do anything other than eating and sleeping. But it's not making sense. Why? Because it's giving me reason, but reason for what? I think it is giving me reason for this. But the people weren't happy with their king because the king was too lazy and would not do anything other than eating and sleeping. And he spent days and weeks and months in his bed, either eating something or sleeping. He almost, because of this, what happened? He almost became inactive. The king became a potato couch, and the people started to worry about the king. So now everything is done. This was easy one. Now this one, adults, teenage. This is giving me a vibe that child. This is giving me a vibe that it's just a timeline. So let's see how we can do this kind of questions. In timeline-based questions, I first simply organize the sentences with time first. The reason for this is because it gives me a very easy way to organize them. For example, I just simply drag them in on this side so that I could show you how I actually do this in the exam. So first comes the childhood, then comes the teenage, and then it comes the adults. So this will be a general organization. I have not read anything. I do not know whether they're making sense or not, but I just did this quickly so that it would be easier for me to compare the ideas. Leave the puzzle phase and refer. A dictionary defines happy as lucky or fortunate. Leave the puzzle phase. I mean, they're talking about puzzle phase somewhere. So where is that? Here. Because if you look here, turning to adults, ask any adult what he means by happiness, and you'll find a puzzle face for a moment. And then you say, but I think a better definition of happiness is the capacity for enjoyment. The meaning of the word happiness changes with growing years. That is a clue that you have growing years means you start from child, and then you go to teenage years, then you go to adults. And then in the adults, the sentence with adults, you can see the word puzzled, and then you leave the puzzle phase, which is referring to puzzle in that sentence, and then at the end, writer's opinion as a conclusion. Now, let's quickly do fill in the blanks. The nation, its first budget deficit. Deficit is a negative word, and if you have deficit, that means if you have been able to survive despite the deficit, that is endures. Because endures is your ability to survive despite the problem, your ability to bear the pain, tolerate the pain. Deficit in 16 years of a slump. Of tells me that it's a word which is followed by of, and I will take because here. Because of is a very good collocation. Yet Botswana, one of the wealthiest, means it has not changed, has remained the same. That's the sense here. On the African, it's collocation and continent would be the perfect word to match with African here. The next one is forget the year are held. And it's inside inverted comma, and it says are. That means I know two things. First, it's something that is held, and it's a plural word, and it's to bid farewell. So all of these words are giving me clues that the answer is parties. Problems and so problems and means the next word most likely is a plural word, and again it's something related to problems, and perhaps it's a collocation and concerns. Problems and concerns. These two words make a good collocation, a very common collocation of the past year. And for a new beginning, again for means I'm looking for prepare for a new beginning is a collocation, And then after that, Buddhists strike their gongs. So gongs are a type of bells that Buddhist temples have. So that means I can easily say temples, because these gongs are the things that we find in Buddhist temples in an effort to 108 types of human weakness. So weakness is a negative thing and you don't want it. You want to get rid of it. And so the word would be expel, which means to move away, to push away, which is by the French Department of Industry. Which is and by. Is and by is a passive structure, and in passive structure after is we need verb 3, and there is only one word which is in verb 3 form, that is regulated. Members must 15 or more people. So what do you think they will do? The 15 or more people means they are employing these people, and then after that each must include, each presentation must include. Why? Because if you read on it says present their collections twice a year, and each presentation means the present word that they had mentioned in the previous sentence. Then the next one is with a sense of. Now a sense of collocates with relief. That's what most of the people pick in the first go, but you have to be careful because it's a warning and you don't feel relieved when you get a warning. So it must be something else. And for those of you who know meaning of the word foreboding, it's actually foreboding, which is a fear of something going wrong. But in Roman times, and then there is it is of March, which is inside inverted comma or inside quotation mark, and that is the clue that it's expression did not necessarily evoke a dark mood. It was the standard way. It was simply the standard way. Those of you who do not know about adverbs, please find out more about adverbs. These are the words which we use to give more information about verbs, and they usually have ly at the end, and that was the reason why I was able to pick simply as the answer here. 16 centuries later, attending his play means people who go to plays, who attend the plays, are called audiences. So again, a very straightforward answer here. As a policy, so it's a word which is used to describe policy, and it would be specific policy, simply because of the reason that other words here cannot be used to describe a policy. It would not make any sense. It was first advanced by the United States, but it was in the typical most favored nation clause, but it was rooted in. Now again, in is the word that was giving me the clue here, and rooted in is the only possible collocation because other words cannot be followed by in. If you try, distributed is followed by to, or across, associated is followed by with, so I am not going to pick them. Open door is generally with China. Now, do you perhaps already know that it should be associated because of with, because these two words go together. No power could preferential duties in the Congo Basin. No power could. Could is an auxiliary verb, and after auxiliary verb, we need a verb in first form. Distributed, past verb. Declaration is a noun. Blatant is an adjective. So this is the only word left. Now, sometimes, even if you don't know meaning of the word, you can pick the word if you think a little bit grammatically. Levy means to put tax on someone or something. Let's go to the next one now. Which of the following most closely represent the ideas expressed in the text? And the answers here are this one. Cereals are a cheap and nutritionally degraded food processed and marketed as a healthy breakfast. And you can find this information here. They are the epitome of a cheap commodity converted by manufacturing to higher value goods. And again, as I said, I'm not discussing or explaining it more because multiple choice questions are not important. But one tip for you. Most of the times, the correct answers are paraphrased versions of the information given in the passage. The next correct answer is this one. The problems arising from the modern British diet are closely linked to the industrial processing of food. And the information is somewhere here. For this is the elephant in the room, of course. It is the industrial processing of food that is the real problem. So that means the industrial processing of the food was the reason behind the problem with the breakfast. The breakfast cereals becoming the breakfast option. But it was not until the Industrial Revolution that people began to eat. No, because we do not know anything about what was the situation before that. So all the other options are impossible here, but we will not have that much time in the exam to eliminate them. Let's go to the last one now. According to the passage, which of the following aspects make it difficult to objectively describe color photography? The camera में वो बैठा सकती है. And here also, again, without spending too much time, let me tell you what are the correct answers here. The chemical composition of the film, and after that, the viewer's own sense of color appreciation. And the other options are incorrect. Again, let me tell you where the answer is. The chemical composition of the film is here, the particular chemical composition of the photographic process. And then after that, the viewer's own sense of color appreciation. This is something you can find here. Then the viewer imposes at another level of interpretation, bringing his or her own color appreciation. So this is the end of this mock test. And I was going a little faster because I wanted to cover everything and explain everything in time as well, because I had only 34 minutes to finish everything. But I think I was going a little faster than needed because I still have a lot of time left. Now, those of you who want to practice these questions, you can actually pause the video before I answer the question, answer those questions yourself, and then after that, you can check the answer immediately. So in the coming days, I'll be posting more videos of the mock test like this, and I hope this will help you to get ready for the exam, and all the best for everything. That's it for today.